Fahrenheit 451. If you're part of my generation, Gen Z, or maybe even a generation below us, you probably remember this from high school. And when we were in high school, reading sucked. And so it really sucks that we had to read this during that time, because Fahrenheit 451 is a very important novel to read nowadays, because Ray Bradbury, he just makes an excellent prediction of the future, of a dystopian future that he thought society was heading into back in the 20th century. And it is very accurate. And this is alone, a novel by itself, a very good novel. One thing that threw me off was it's actually pretty short. I finished this in less than a week, and I'm a very slow reader, so that goes to show how short it is. I don't remember it being that short. It's definitely not a big book, or the novel on its own is definitely not big. But one thing that makes this scarier than another future prediction of a dystopian society, 1984, that the outcome is definitely way scarier in that one, but I think we're farther away as a society from 1984 than we are farther away as a society from Fahrenheit 451, which makes this a lot scarier. Because basically what Ray Bradbury predicted is that we as a society would abandon literature, abandon critical thinking, abandon reading, abandon books, all the knowledge inside books, for entertainment, for pleasure. We would start ignoring all the things books has to offer, and we would start indulging in pleasure and entertainment instead. He saw that coming all the way, I forgot when this book was written, actually, as ashamed as I am to admit that. In the 1900s, obviously. He made that prediction with this book. This novel is about a main character, a firefighter, who burns books because it is illegal to own them, and a society that doesn't really care. Doesn't really care that books are illegal and that they have to be burned because they're too distracted by their giant walls that are TVs. Instead of walls, people have these giant TVs, and they play them and they stare at them all day because it's entertaining and they don't have to think about anything. And it's scary because our society, slowly, day by day, we are abandoning reading. We are abandoning books for entertainment. Doom scrolling, TikTok, gambling. These kind of things are being advertised and consumed everywhere. Addictions, alcohol, drugs. As a society, we're latching onto these things more, onto pleasure, onto distractions, more and more, just like the people in this book did. And one of the craziest things about this book is the main character is talking to his boss, who eventually he gets into a conflict with. But his boss is basically anti-book, but he knows about the history of how society, adopted burning books and adopted entertainment instead. And he mentions that the government didn't even need to enforce rules or regulations and slowly take away the books. That people, the people, us, we willingly abandon the books. They, in their society in this book, they willingly abandon the books for pleasure, for entertainment. The government didn't even need to do anything. And now they're all being controlled by the government through the entertainment, through their mindlessness. Another powerful scene in this book that is something that I've noticed even today is that at one point the main character, Montag, he's at his house and his wife and her friends are over. His wife invites her friends over and they come over to hang out. But really all they do is they sit in the living room and they watch the giant TVs. They don't talk, they don't converse. The main character, still being self-aware and wanting depth and human interaction, goes in and he turns off all the TVs. And he says, we're going to talk. We're going to have a conversation. And the ladies aren't worried that they're going to have a conversation about something scary. They're scared because they're going to have a conversation in general. And you see that everywhere today. People on their phones, at the dinner table, at social gatherings, outside in public, everyone's on their phones, no one's talking. And people would have the same reaction today. If you swiped their phones away and said, we're going to talk, we're going to sit down, we're going to have a conversation and just interact, people would be dumbfounded. They would be scared. They'd be like, what's happening? Why would you do that? And that's exactly what happens in this book. And I think that's extremely important to understand, and it's extremely important to read this so you do become scared, so you do turn around and you try to embrace what Ray Bradbury wanted us to embrace, which is books and human interaction and critical thinking. Another parallel that I see in my own life in this book is that one of the characters in this book mentions that reading books, having all this knowledge, it makes people disagree with each other. It makes certain minority groups, or maybe not even minorities, even huge groups of people uncomfortable. Certain facts do. Certain information about the world makes certain groups of people uncomfortable. So in order to, so everyone could be happy, they just got rid of the information. And something like that happens in my life today, and I'm sure in so many other people's life. But I have a couple people in my life who you try and bring up a discussion, a controversial topic, and because it makes them uncomfortable, because they don't want to talk about it, they just completely shut down the conversation. It's like, no, we're not going to talk about that. Let's not bring that up. And that's very, very bad, because once you stop having conversations with each other and stop challenging each other's ideas, then good ideas don't come to light. Bad ideas don't get shoved down. You just kind of get spoon-fed by whatever media outlets there are, most of which come from the government, and you just accept it because nobody talks about things anymore. And I've seen that in my own life, and it's a very toxic trait that some people are developing, not wanting to talk about things. And you see that in this book. Overall, it was a very great book. A good novel, keeps you, captivated and interested, not talking about his predictions and how they correlate to today's world, which is basically what captivates me the most. But just as a story in general, it's very enjoyable. I'm so glad I sat down and actually read this for real this time and didn't just rely on what I remember from high school, because from in high school I wasn't a reader. I was disgusted to have to read this book or any book. So sitting down and reading this again was very, very enjoyable and informative, and just eye-opening, because Ray Bradbury nailed it. Once again, I'll just summarize his prediction that is, embodied in this book, but he predicted that we as a society would abandon literacy, abandon books, abandon in-depth conversation on our own, because we chose comfort, because we chose mass entertainment, because it was easier to accept, spoon-fed propaganda from the government and from, major news outlets than it was to tackle complex ideas and things and facts that made us uncomfortable, and that facts that went against what we believed in and that made us challenge ourselves and our ideas. We as a society abandoned all of that for the simple, easy, propaganda-fed government and mindless entertainment. And that is happening today. And it is scary. At least for me it is. And one of the good characters in this book that Montague meets at the end of the story talks about how back when the books were being taken away, when universities were under attack, when thinkers were under attack, he was a coward and he didn't say anything. There were people who fought back, but a lot didn't because they were too scared to say anything. And finally, that character at the end of the story got courage that he might, to maybe do something, but it was too late. He had his chance to say something and he didn't. And then it was too late. All the books were gone and burned. Most of them. But, yeah. A scary prediction, mainly scary because of how accurate it is and how much of it is coming to pass in our society today. It opens your eyes and it makes you want to change things. It makes you want to be better. It makes you want to read more and talk to more people and reject the mass entertainment that's being shoved in our faces every day through our phones and TVs. I hope this was able to help some people, convince them to read this, convince them to open their eyes and see how scary it is that this is coming to pass, and hopefully motivate people to do something about it. Thanks for listening.